could be turmoil, and because ultimately you fear them instead of God. Or maybe, maybe it's even, I don't know, maybe it's even with your immediate family. Maybe you're a father and a husband, and you're too scared to step out and take the role as a spiritual leader, and you don't want to do these things because you could look awkward, because it could be hard, because maybe other people in your family don't want to do it, and you have a fear of them more than God. Maybe sometimes we care more about what people think than what God thinks. But yet, what Samuel said in the beginning, before Saul did any of this, is that you need to do this one thing. You need to fear God and serve Him faithfully. Not the people, not yourself, not your enemies, not anyone else. Just serve God and fear Him. Because if you serve anything else, if you fear anything else, then it's going to lead to disobedience. It's going to lead ultimately to sin. And that's why Saul did this. Because he feared the voice of the people instead of God. And so he's still concerned with his own appearance, and he says to Samuel, "Return with me." And Samuel says, "No, you have rejected the word of the Lord, so He has rejected you." And Saul, in an effort to get Samuel to come back with him, grabs his tunic and it rips, it tears. And Samuel takes this opportunity and uses it for prophecy, which I just think is so cool. But, there's just this tear in his tunic, and he's like, okay, it's time to prophesy. And he says, the kingdom of Israel is going to be torn from you. It's going to be given to a neighbor, someone who's better than you. And I would say, to someone who fears God and serves Him faithfully with all his heart. And we know that person was David. He was a man after God's own heart because he did fear God, because he did serve God, because he loved God more than anything else, with all his heart. And so, finally, Samuel agrees to go back with Saul. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's just so that Saul will be quiet, so that he'll stop bothering him. But he goes back with Saul. Then look what happens. In verse 32, and Samuel said, Bring here to me Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And Agag came to him cheerfully. And Agag said, Surely the bitterness of death is past. And Samuel said, As your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. And Samuel hacked Agag to pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. See, because Saul was too afraid, because he cared more about what the people thought than what God thought, he didn't do what God told him to do. And Samuel does it for him. See, the will of the Lord is accomplished with or without you. You can be in line with God's will, and you can serve Him, you can follow Him, you can fear Him. Or you can be out of it, and you can do your own thing. But what God wants to do will be accomplished. And to me, that's a really great, reassuring thing. That God's will is always accomplished. What God plans is always fulfilled. And so Samuel comes and he does what Saul couldn't. He hacks Agag to pieces. Verse 34, And Samuel came to Ramah, and Saul went to his house in Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel did not see Saul again till the day of his death. But Samuel grieved over Saul, and the Lord regretted that He had made Saul king over Israel. And so this is the consequence for Saul. He didn't fear God. He didn't love God. He didn't serve Him. And so he's rejected as being king. He never sees Samuel again. He lives as king for a little while longer, but eventually David takes the throne. And eventually Saul ends up killing himself. Because he doesn't serve God. Because he doesn't love God. Because he doesn't fear God. And it just drives him crazy. He keeps going down a path that leads further and further into darkness. And eventually, it leads to him taking his own life. So do we, like Saul, fear God less than we should? Do we ever care about other people's opinions more than God's opinion? And if we do, here's what I would suggest from chapter 12. He says, fear God, serve him faithfully with your whole heart, for consider what great things he has done for you. Maybe you're here and you think, well, I don't value God's opinion as much as I should, or I don't fear God as much as I should, or I don't love God as much as I should. Here's what I would suggest. Consider the great things he has done for you. Because I can guarantee God has done some amazing things for you. Everything you have, everything is a gift from God. Your house, your family, your life, your very breath. And I just think about all the things God has done for us. I think about how he created this world, and he created it with beauty and, with things we can enjoy, with pleasure. And then I think about things like the sun, and he created them so powerfully and so mightily. And I think about those things, and those are the kind of things that we can consider and dwell on that points us to God, that helps us to fear God, that helps us to love God and to serve God. But the most important thing I would say you should consider is consider the great thing God did for you in sending his Son. Because your salvation is a complete gift from God. And you are not able to earn it. I'm not able to earn it. Yet God comes and he gives it to us freely. And Jesus Christ came and he suffered. He was beaten. He was bruised. He bled for you. He died for you on a cross. Because he loved you. Because he wanted to make it possible for you to love God, for you to serve God, for you to fear God. And so, if you need to respond for any reason, will you please come forward as we stand and sing this invitation song to encourage you.